Packers would love a second turtle. Ball takes off. Cuts away to short. First down and the 47-yard line. Horn in trouble. Going down. First possession of football game. Well, quick turn. With the back.
All the offensive linemen are covered by defensive linemen. Good job. The only thing that is
Number 17, the Hawkeyes finally won that one, 38 down there. And Katzenmoyer fired at 101. Katzenmoyer, the big Cantarillo, and down is our Lumble. Wants a block for a safety, and there's the
Wild plants his helmet right on the number 7 in this black jersey. Man, that's why he's going to win the Butkus Award for the best linebacker in the country. Nobody in college football hits like that.
Andy Katzenmoyer joining us today, former Westerville South Wildcat, Ohio State Buckeye, first-round draft pick of the New England Patriots. Man, what's life like for the Big Cat nowadays?
Pretty good. I really can't complain.
Yeah. Our paths first crossed when you had finished up your career in the NFL and you came back and you started doing some strength and conditioning stuff for us at Ohio State. Jim Tressel had brought you back on. You're in there working with Al Johnson and Bernardo Emerson. And it had to have been special for you before we rattle off all the career accolades and awards you got, but to be able to come back and kind of give back what you learned to guys like Ross Holman and Marcus Freeman, who's now the head coach at Notre Dame, and to be able to work alongside guys like AJ and Bobby Carpenter and Schleggs, all American, all Big Ten caliber linebackers, for you to come and do that. That's not something that people will see on your resume as much as everything else that you did on the field, but that had to be pretty special for you to kind of give back to those guys.
It really was. It was, I was at a point of transition in my life, and I wasn't quite sure where, what my next path was, but comfort level wise, to kind of keep my brain stimulated and figure out where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do. The weight room and being a part of that was kind of my way of helping give back. It helped me, obviously, with, figure out and give me some time on what I wanted to do, but also allowed me to pass along some knowledge and get to know the guys. And amazingly enough, like, it's been one of those things, I was able to connect and build some good relationships from that time.
I still remember the first thing I learned from you in the weight room. It wasn't anything to do with moving weight or any type of technique, anything like that. I first learned, because all of us, when we get into meeting rooms, we start snapping out our Copenhagen or our chew or whatever, how to actually do a horseshoe, which wrapped all the way around, man. I never saw somebody put one of those in until you did it, man. And that one always kind of stuck with me. That's a real man's chew, right?
Yeah. Well, luckily enough, I don't chew anymore.
I'm out too, man.
Yeah. It's one of those, yeah. So, but I guess it's not the proudest thing I've been known for.
Hey, we got a lot of time to kill in between all that high intensity shit that we have to deal with, trying to compete at that level.
For sure.
Hey, Andy, you're now the president of the Central Ohio chapter of the NFL Alumni Association. Jim and I really kind of first got our blessing and start under Beasley Reese and Bart Oates to be able to kind of start this show, which we do over at the Hall of Fame Village, powered by Johnson Controls. A little too cold out today. I'm not doing the -5, so I'm going to stay right here in our studios. But talk about what's going on with the Central Ohio chapter. We know that you'll have your standard golf outing in the summertime, and you're raising funds for different charities. But are there other things on the horizon? Are there other things that you're working on with some former players down in the area that we can kind of keep people apprised of?
Yeah. So I became president right before COVID hit, and being involved in NFL alumni in the past, I really wanted to be more than just a golf outing, but COVID and restrictions like that have limited our ability to be really active in the community and to do lots of things we have initiatives for. But with things lightening up, we started having monthly meetings with players, kind of just getting guys together in the community and just having them come together, figure out what they're doing. It's a simple breakfast, an hour long. That's the initiative we have. It's kind of, no matter where you're, who you played for, what era you played in, there's a common bond that all of us guys that play in the NFL have, despite your level of success, that we can all share with each other, and we can always, associate with, and which is kind of cool. We have community outreach events that we're doing. So we're going out and helping other nonprofits that really just need manpower, women power, people power to help facilitate what they're, what good deeds they're doing for the Central Ohio community. And then we have fundraising events throughout the year that we are just trying to go out and, raise money for local charities. We have an event coming up in end of March, March 29th at Top Golf. We've partnered with Neighborhood Bridges, which is a local foundation here in Central Ohio that helps support children in school districts to provide them goods, needs, food, whatever they're lacking. Neighborhood Bridges helps supply that. So we thought that was a fantastic organization to work with and, raise money for. So that's an exciting event, a brand new event for us to do something at Top Golf. We've partnered with Buyers Auto to help us kind of facilitate that as well. So it's going to be a fun event, brand new. Last year we tried to plan for it, but COVID just seemed to really put its clamps down that time of year. The summertime we have our golf event, July 18th. It's going to be a Medallion. We don't have a fundraising partner yet for that. We're going to finalize it down to two different organizations, either Boys and Girls Club or Special Olympics. We're just trying to secure that. Probably do that in the next few weeks. And then we're looking to do a fundraiser in the fall. We're not really sure what that is yet, but we're leaning towards a tailgate, but we're not 100% sure. So no, it's just we're just trying to get ourselves involved in the community, do as much as we can to give back, help support players as a whole with whatever they're doing, whatever initiatives they have. Like Roy Hall, a former player, Ohio State Buckeye, has an organization. We donate it, and he donates food to kids every year around the holidays. So we helped support his cause this past year. So anything we can do to help guys out, bring them together, and just kind of give back to the community is like kind of our main mission.
Yeah, shout out to Roy Hall, man. Got him right back here, part of that 2006 Big Ten championship team.
Yeah.
Outright Big Ten champs. Graduated with Roy, great player, great wide receiver. So shout out to the Driven Foundation, all that they do. For guys down there that are former NFL players that aren't involved with the chapter, how can they find you? Is there a website they go to? How do they get involved and sign up and be a part of it to help out?
They can email me at andy.katzenmoyer@nflalumni.com or .org. Most guys have my cell phone. They can reach out that way. The social media.
Yep.
However you can find me. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, shout out to Frank Stams too. You talked about some of those groups you're trying to figure out who you're going to work with. The golf outing that they were able to put on up at Silver Lake Country Club, they had the Special Olympics involved. Great event up there, always raising funds and doing that stuff. It kind of what I'm sure Coach Cooper preached to you guys. What we heard from Coach Tressel was the Woody Hayes way, right? Pay it forward, any way we can. What we were blessed and what we were given through those different levels. You talked about those levels, and first, let me pick your brain here a little bit about some high school football around the Central Ohio area. Your Westerville South Wildcat, a lot of those areas around Central Ohio, around the outer belt, have just blown up. Olentangy, the Lewis Center area, what Hilliard's done, what Westerville South has done, even down to Pickerington. Very competitive football. Where do you see that on a daily basis when you're reading the paper, you're catching up on the local guys that are kind of rising up? How do you see the state of football in the Columbus area, high school football?
I think in public schools there's this cycle, which you'll have it happened in my era when, back in the mid 90s, where there was a lot of talent in the Columbus, Ohio area when it came to football. I mean, a lot of talent. Like I remember playing against Dublin, Scioto, and all three of their tailbacks went to Ohio State.
Wow.
Then we also played against, that same era was Derek Combs, who was starting tailback for Grove City. You had a kid from Reynoldsburg. It was just, there was so much talent, and that doesn't even include the private schools, DeSales, Waterson, Hartley, Reedy, and all the talent they put out during that era. So there was just so much talent. And then there's always a little bit of a dip when it comes to the abundance of it. There's always great talent. Then there's a little dip, and then it kind of rises back, and then the ever cycle. I think when it comes to, you mentioned about how much it's grown as far as school districts. Back when I was in school, there was 2 Westerville schools, there was 1 Pickerington school, there was 1 Hilliard. Dublin had just grown to 2 my senior year. Olentangy was its only high school. Now Olentangy has, I think, 5 high schools.
It's amazing.
Westville has 3. So the point is, like, it's just grown. So which dispenses the talent pool, allows more kids to play, which is fantastic, but also disperses the talent pool. And then, so it's not so clustered, which is good and bad, however you look at it.
Right.
But no, I think the talent in the recent years has been fantastic. And kudos to the coaches, and like there's a number of former players from Ohio State that have their kids put themselves on the mark and are going to big time schools, which is awesome. But it's just ever growing. It's just ever revolving cycle of talent in Central Ohio.
That's an interesting perspective you say there about how it kind of dilutes or waters it down a little bit when you're spreading those kids out over all those schools. And I'll tell you, just being down there in Westerville recently here over the last couple of months, called a state final game down there, a state semifinal game down there at Westerville Central. And you pull back in there right there off of 3Cs, and it's like, man, this is a beautiful, beautiful high school. So you see how Columbus has grown. We know the real estate market down there. It's just completely blown up, and the landscape of what Columbus looked like for you back in the late 90s to what it looked like for me in the mid 2000s, it's completely different. All the buildings and the commercial stuff that's gone up on campus. I mean, the days of just those little Gem Ray's dive bars down on the corner compared to now, you got the B-dubs and everybody, the big boy corporations that have moved in. It's interesting, but it's also great to see. And we know why. A lot of it has to do with inside of the outer belt, man, right? The Buckeyes, you have the state capitol. Always thought that was one of the greatest draws to go to school there, because you got the campus, which is huge. You got the downtown area, which it's just a great mesh within the city. When you look at your experience coming out of Westerville into Ohio State, the guys you had to cut your teeth against, Corey Stringer, maybe the greatest offensive tackle to ever play the game, and Orlando Pace. You got you got guys like E. George and Michael Wiley who have come in. I mean, most people have always asked me, they say, who was the toughest guy you ever played against in a game? I said, it wasn't a game, it was practice. I mean, that had to be pretty intense walking into that first day, right?
To say the least, yeah. Like it was my very first play in 9-on-7 in pads, Orlando Pace just ran through me. And that didn't happen. Like it just, I was trying to go 100 miles an hour and trying to get the tailback on like a toss sweep or something, and he just, again, like just ran through. Like it's like I wasn't even there. And he kind of laughed and picked me up after the fact, and I didn't make that mistake again. But really, when it came to my freshman year, it was baptism by fire. But it was such a senior laden defense that I played on that they were great for support, but it was also the idea that I had to perform because I was in the middle and I couldn't be that weak link.
You're the young dude.
Yeah, which didn't bother me. But you know, you're playing, you know, when in the front of you, you have, you know, Fickle, who I grew up with, I knew, went to school with his younger brother, but still he looked at me like, hey buddy, this is my last go around. You had Vrabel, you had Finkus, you had Ryan Miller, Greg Belisari, aside from me at linebackers, you know, Sean Springs, Ty Howard were my corners. Antoine Winfield was our nickel corner, which is crazy because he was incredibly awesome. And our safeties were senior and a junior, and both of those guys, but like we had so many guys, I think every single person I just named went to a training camp or played at least a game in the NFL, if not played longer than that. So it's just crazy to me. Like that's the kind of expectation. And then offensively was the same expectation. That was just the era of Ohio State football that that was just before you, and it kind of Coop build up the program to kind of have it be its pinnacle and build and build and build, and then really all that effort that he put in moved on to the next class, next generation, you guys. That makes sense?
Yeah,
So it was
sure.
just very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, we know that the landscape of college football has changed. I mean, we could talk about NILs and transfer portal and stuff like that, but you got to feel nostalgic at times when you think back to football like that. I mean, you look at the Big Ten and defenses. I mean, Illinois with Hardy and Simeon Rice, what Saban was doing at Michigan State, you know, what Pat Fitzgerald was doing up at Northwestern, what you guys did, those guys that you just rattled off. And this will always stick with me. And I'm just curious if you ever think about it, you know, when you look back at your career and think to have all those guys on a defense like that and not win a national championship. And I remember in 06, when we're fighting to get into a national championship spot, Tress would always have somebody come in and speak to the guys, team dinner the night before. And he took Greg Belisari up to East Lansing when we were playing Michigan State up there, you know, and by this time we're 9-10 weeks into the season, you know, everybody's talking upset. I mean, similar to what happened to you guys. I mean, with Michigan State, I think, was that 97 or 98?
98.
Yeah. And I just remember the message from Greg, like, don't let what happened, don't let that one game keep you from going to a national championship game. Make sure you give it a little bit more, even if you think these guys coming out of East Lansing aren't that good, or they're not as good as Michigan down the road. You know, don't end up being like me. And Greg's like, I think about it at least once a day, that Michigan State game. Like, if we get that win, we're beating Michigan and we're going to the national championship game, or we're playing for a national championship. How often you look back on that and just kind of think about that era of football and how tough and dominant the Big Ten was?
I think I'd say obviously football season, and then when you catch up with former guys and players, you talk about the era. Again, I think when it comes to conferences, like there was a cycle. I think during the era in the 90s, early 2000s, the Big Ten played some really, really good football all around. Even the bad teams weren't that bad. Then there was a surge in the SEC, probably mid 2000s up until now. And I think the Big Ten has really, with I think Urban coming in and kind of putting everyone on notice about how it has to be and how the next evolution of recruiting and how the game's played and all that stuff. That's really stepped up everyone's ability to come out and produce a very talented, very well-run, very disciplined, group of players and teams. And you don't really see that, you don't really feel that during Big Ten play, but you see it during bowl games, you see it during, before they play the Big Ten season, that kind of stuff, with the number of victories that the Big Ten gets. But when it comes to it, like, the Big Ten just beats each other up now. Like 10 years ago, they didn't do that. 10 years before that, it was every week was a slugfest.
Yeah.
So to me, it's great. I'm glad the Big Ten's coming back. I will never like to see Michigan beat Ohio State. I was actually at that game this past year, and really Michigan just manhandled up front Ohio State. They just on both sides. And so it put Ohio State on notice, and hopefully they made the right changes, and next year that won't be an issue.
Yeah, I think with what Urban had done and what Ryan Day is doing is they're showing you this is the model to compete for a national championship on a yearly basis. And when you talk about physicality, I mean, to me at times people have watched Buckeye football, and even that Michigan game this past year, they saw our guys defensively and offensively get out physical. When you think back at your career, kind of twofold question here, guys that maybe they were your influence or you tried to pattern your game after, and really what was coming out of college, your career at Ohio State, the most physical game, the most physical experience, whether it was even a 2-a-day practice or an opponent that you played again that you just remember, wow, that was like as close to war as you're possibly going to get.
In college?
Yeah.
I would say probably every Michigan game I played in.
Yeah.
But I'd say especially my sophomore year, the front was pretty young. And that was the year they won the national championship. And they had, I think, 4 or 5 linemen.
John Jansen, Mo Williams, you got Hutch out there.
Right. They were fantastic players.
Yeah.
They were good in space. They were big, strong, physical. They could run. Like it was like, I guess I would seem like they're playing a true NFL game because they were all that good. So that was probably the game I got most beat up in.
Is there somebody that you kind of look to even coming out of high school or when you were younger that you're like, you know what, when I line up and play the linebacker position, I want to play like that guy. I want to take, or did you kind of take pieces of different guys' games?
So I grew up a really big Bo Jackson fan. And even though he played running back, he ran physical. And so anyone, you look at guys like big hitters like Steve Atwater, back in the day in college, the Boz, you look at the hits that, Tatum put on people, like those were the kind of things that was just the game that I knew. That was the game I was taught to play in high school. So now you don't teach that, but
right.
That was how the game was played, and that's how I played it. And I just, I didn't want to play. I didn't want to be dirty. I didn't want to play outside the confines of what the rules were, but within, from whistle to whistle, snap of the ball to whatever the whistle goes, I didn't want to not be physical. Ironically, I got hurt my rookie year in the NFL. I was 260, 265, our biggest linebacker. And I couldn't really do that I couldn't be as physical as I wanted just because my neck was just messed up, but I could still run. And I still played on nickel and dime. I was a linebacker. I could cover tight ends, backs, receivers, whoever. So I guess that was the one unique thing about me was even though I was physical and I'm known for that, a lot of guys I played with couldn't believe how fluid I was when I moved.
At C.H. Vallis & Associates, we've been proudly serving the greater Stark County community for over 78 years. Locally owned, we cover your home, auto, business, and life insurance along with your group benefits. Our partnership with auto owners has allowed us to span not only Ohio, but throughout the entire country. Did you know that Auto Owners, an A++ rated company by AM Best and a Fortune 500 company, has ranked C.H. Vallis & Associates a top 10 insurance agency in the state of Ohio? From your basic home and auto needs to insuring some of the largest companies in America, there's a reason people choose C.H. Vallis & Associates and Auto Owners. Our dedication and passion for our clients and their coverage is part of our commitment to excellence. For all your insurance coverage needs, there's only one call to make, and that's C.H. Vallis & Associates, located at 1302 South Main Street in North Canton. Contact us at 330-494-2776 today and see the difference in customer satisfaction.
Katzenmoyer joining us on the 1372 show, the QB and the OG, 3-time All Big Ten, Butkus, Lambert. You're in the Hall of Fame at Ohio State. You got a tree in Buckeye Grove. Appreciate you joining us here today, live inside the new Stark Media Studios. Shout out to our friends at the NFL Alumni Association, the Hall of Fame Village, powered by Johnson Controls. We'll be back out there next Monday shooting live. And also a special shout out to some of our good friends and sponsors, those over at CH Vallis and Associates. You can contact them at 330-494-2776 or check them out at 1302 South Main Street in North Canton. Also, the guys up at the Cigar Lodge, Doug Green, check them out. They're located right next to the prestigious Firestone Country Club. And of course, our friends at Tecate. Nobody does Mexican beer like Tecate. Enjoy refreshing Tecate today and drink responsibly. All right, Andy, when you think about those things, those awards I rattled off to you, what's one? I mean, obviously the Hall of Fame, it kind of encompasses everything you did in your career, but is there one award more than anything or something from your Ohio State career that sticks out to you more than that you just look at and say, I'm probably going to put this one at the top of the mantle?
Well, I mean, the Buckus Award.
Yeah.
Obviously being a linebacker and being voted as the best linebacker in college is pretty special. So I would say individual award, that'd be it. But I think that when I look back at my career, what I'm most proud of is really, we only lost 5 games when I was in college. 2 to Michigan, 1 to Penn State, 1 to Florida State, and 1 to Michigan State. And if you look at the lineage of college football and the history, those are pretty good schools.
Right.
Especially during that era. And so I guess I'm more proud of what as a team we were able to do. Every year we were a different kind of team. But to even say, I was going back looking at NCAA records, and you can go back and look at the history of like defenses, ranks, stuff like that. The rankings we had defensively during the time I was at Ohio State were phenomenal. I think we were top 5 all 3 years, which is to me is the coolest thing, because it was a true team effort, and and we couldn't really rest on doing it one way or another because offenses adapt, and that's just the lineage of how things go. But every year we had to get a little bit different and be a little bit better, and we did. So I think I'm most proud about that.
Be able to check out some of the iconic images and big hits, some video clips of Andy here before the show. We got those rolling for you. And Andy, as we kind of start to wrap things up with you again, we appreciate your time joining us on the 1372 show. Just a little bit more, as you mentioned, about your time with the Patriots. First question, even outside of your career, you didn't really play against Tom Brady when you were in college, but you were there with him while you guys were with the Patriots.
I played 1 year against Tom.
Looking at him, I mean, did you think he'd do the things he would?
So I played my last year at Ohio State. Tom threw for, at that time, I think a Michigan record for attempts in a game. He had like 60 something against us, I believe.
Really?
They couldn't run. Yeah, they couldn't run against us. It was the only time that we beat Michigan. He was a good quarterback. He was battling with Drew Henson. And Drew was a good quarterback, great athlete. Fast forward, he gets drafted by New England, 6th round draft pick, right? Maybe 7th, whatever it was.
Everybody remembers the picture of him at the combine. It
right.
Doesn't look like maybe the greatest player ever.
No, but he gets in the locker room, and he's a great locker room guy. He is an extremely hard worker. When you compared him at that time to Drew Bledsoe, it wasn't a really comparison.
Right.
Drew was the first big-time franchise quarterback, and Drew's 6'6", 260, had a rocket for an arm, was laser precision, could make every throw possible. Also a great locker room guy. So I think Drew kind of just Tom leaned on Drew as far as that, but then Tom is just such a competitor, such a great competitor. He flat out told me, first day we're getting taped during camp, and we're next to each other, and he's like, "Hey Andy, how you doing?" I'm like, "Hey man, good to see you." He's like, "You probably don't remember, but he's like, man, you knocked the crap out of me when I was at Michigan." I'm like, "I did?" He's like, "Yeah, I got the pass off," but he's like, "That is the hardest I've ever been hit in my whole life." And I'm like, hey man, well, I'm glad to see you got up. Or I don't recall what I said, but because I don't remember it happening. But that being said, like he's a great dude, and the work that he's put in, the success, to see him. What people probably don't know about Tom and the relationship that Tom and Bill had. So the year that Tom became starting quarterback, Drew got hurt. The quarterback coach for New England had a health scare and had to step away. So because we were in the middle of the season, we weren't able to get a quarterback coach. So Bill stepped in and became the quarterback coach for that year. And that really secured the bond between Bill and Tom that worked for so long, and kind of helped Tom understand the game, because Bill's a smart guy when it comes to football. He understands every aspect of it. And it's really Bill's known for his defense, but for him to be able to come in and actually be a quarterback coach for a year and to have the production that he did for that year is a true testament to how good a coach he is and how good of a player Tom is.
So that's got to be like at least top 3 all time and most awkward Ohio State, Michigan moments. You and Tom Brady, 2 young players coming into the NFL, Michigan, Ohio State, dude. And he's saying that to you, and you're probably looking back thinking, no, there's no way that this dude's going to end up doing all that he does in his career and still playing ball at that age. I mean, as well as I do, the game has changed a little bit. So there's not as much of that violence on the quarterback that you may have been used to, or which you inflicted upon him. He may not have been hit as hard as he's been hit since you laid that one on him 4 or 5. I don't know. But to think about him being able to still do this thing over 40 years old, and your situation when you get in there, and most people don't really know the full extent of what exactly happened or what you went through with your neck, and to how much damage was really done. I mean, do you still feel those effects today? Have you been able to make a total recovery past that thing? And really, what was it? How did it happen? Was it just a forming up in the hole on a tackle and you feel that crack? Or tell us about it.
So it happened my rookie year. I don't know why, but I just had between my C4, C5 disc, I had a weak lining that surrounds the disc itself, and it just gave way. And so imagine you take a disc and you have like the gel inside. So it was just, every time I hit someone, once the lining broke, every time I hit someone, that stuff would come out, and it would press on my nerve, and it really would affect my left side of my arm. Causes it to go numb, almost like a stinger for those who've had it, but it was a longer lasting effect, and it affected the nerve. So it happened my rookie year. I finished the season. I was evaluated by a doctor. They said that it was nothing they could see on film. But at the time also, the starting middle linebacker was injured. So there was a reason to have me play. That makes sense?
Who was the guy that was out? Do you remember who that was?
Ted Johnson. Ted Johnson got hurt, and he wasn't able to play Mike, which is the reason why I got moved over to middle. I was playing outside before that. And then it was actually me and Teddy Bruschi battling for position.
Wow, that's crazy.
So yeah, Ted Johnson got hurt. He tore his bicep. They moved me in the middle because I played it in college. I knew I understood the defense. I played it 3 years. So it was an okay fit. I understood everything about the position, whatever. And in the off season, it recovered. I felt good. Belichick took over as coach for Pete Carroll. I was having a great camp. In fact, we actually broke camp. Belichick, we had just a pads practice in the afternoon. Belichick called me in the office that morning and said, "Hey, Andy, you've had a great camp. We've got to figure out a way to get you in the field. You're just too good of a player not to be on the field for us." I'm like, "All right, cool." So that afternoon, we're in helmets only. There's a guy trying to make the team. fellow linebacker trying to make the team, and he on a surprise onside. I was on kick return. On a surprise onside, the ball goes down. My job was just to cover it and recover. The kid ends up hitting me, separating my shoulder. I had a grade 2 separated shoulder, and I had neck injury again.
Oh.
And so I took 2 weeks off, saw a bunch of doctors for my shoulder, but not my neck. Tried to play 8 more games, and every week it got worse. It got to the point where I could curl. I had a hard time curling. I could curl like 75-pound dumbbell on my right arm. I could barely curl 15 pounds on my left.
Wow.
Like neurologically, it was just gone. It just couldn't function. And so my last game was against the Jets on Monday night. Ironically, kickoff return, made a block. My left arm just gave way. I walked off the field as the play was going and said, "I'm done. I just can't do this
at that
anymore."
moment, this it's a wrap.
Mm-hmm. So went and got looked at, talked to my agent, saw a doctor down in Dallas, tried to have basically like a scope on my neck where they shaved off the bulging part of my disc. And hopefully with time, the outside part recovers. I go back into next year camp, day 3. I told myself going into camp, I got to go 100 miles an hour. That's just the way I play. I've got to know in my head that I'll be okay to take the hits. By day 3, I had all the same effects as I had the previous year. So I ended up having to go down to Dallas again, had a single level fusion, did a few weeks of rehab, was supposed to fly back on September 11th, 2001. They released me a day early, fortunately, because, I wake up actually back in Ohio and September 11th happened, and I'm in a neck brace. It was just it was a whole,
wow.
So yeah, I was supposed to be flying back that morning. Anyway, so I was fortunate in that aspect. And then, but I'll tell you what, so probably the coolest part about my whole injury story to me is, Belichick for years has always been known as this kind of what you see on TV, kind of dry, bland, no personality. And when he came in, he was a flamethrower to everyone. I mean, everyone was on notice: player, coach, trainer, water boy, front office staff, newspaper, like whoever it was, like you're on notice. If you're not going in the direction that I'm going, then you'll be left off the bus. So I get back, and I've been communicating all my rehab stuff, my surgery, with the head trainer, and thinking that was the protocol. I wasn't told otherwise. I didn't want to bug coach because it was middle of season. So I get back to New England. Very first thing, calls me into his office, and we sit down, and he goes, "Why the F haven't you told me about your recovery, your surgery?" And I'm like, "Well, coach, I've been talking to the trainer. I thought he would just tell you." He's like, "You're my player." He's like, "You're not." He's like, the trainer's a trainer. He's like, "You are my player. I want to know." So it was, in a weird way, going back, like I didn't know how to respond to that. But you look back at it now, and you're like, that's his way of showing that he cares.
Yeah.
His fatherly way. And so for that, like, I'm very thankful that I had that experience with him. I wish it would have lasted longer. At the same time, I learned quite a bit about culture and, building camaraderie and what he's done in his own unique way and how it's worked. At the same time, I respect the way that Pete Carroll, who was the coach that drafted me, has done what he's done and how successful he's been, and how it's completely different, to what Bill Belichick is. So anyways, that's the story about my injury and kind of some cool stuff about that.
That's your football life, man. Hey, Andy,
Yeah.
we appreciate you joining us on the 1372 show. Shout out to our partner, CH Vallis and Associates, Kate, and also the Cigar Lodge, our partners over at the NFL Alumni Association and the Hall of Fame Village, powered by Johnson Controls. We'll continue to catch up with you down the line as you do those different events with the Central Ohio chapter and kind of keep people apprised of what's going on. Before we get you out of here, man, you graduated. Talk about what that experience and that feeling was like for you. I know that there was a lot of bullshit that people wanted to talk about towards the end of your time there, going from Ohio State to the NFL and staying eligible. I mean, hey, a lot of people don't understand what we have to go through. That's working 2 full-time jobs at once, trying to be a star Division I college football player, also while trying to get a degree at one of the greatest universities in the world. So for you to actually come back here and do that and get that done, what's that mean to you, man?
Well, it was something I always talked about doing, especially after I retired. I always felt like I had every reason not to, or made excuses not to. But the path it was kind of winding. After my stint, like you talked about me, coming back to the weight room and doing that kind of led me to opening up a business, and I did that for 15 years. And when COVID rolled out, before that, I knew that I kind of wanted to make a change. Like I was kind of getting burnt out of, running a business and running a gym and doing all that. And when COVID rolled out, like in the spring, and they shut down gyms, I remember just talking to my wife and saying, I don't want to go back to doing this anymore. This is just not, like, my heart's just not in it. And so I, sold all my stuff off and made the decision to go back to school, and really, because I had the time to at that point. I'm like, I'm going to make it 100%. I got to pivot my career, do something different. And a part of that was also going back and get my degree. So then I made the pivot, going from, I really liked the people aspect of what I was doing when it came to running a gym and helping people that way. I was alumni president, so I was getting my feel good with like helping give back to the community, and I wanted to help people. So I moved into the industry as far as doing insurance, but I'm like, I need to get my degree. That's, for me, it's so I can just say, hey, you know what, it's done. I reached out to John Macco, who was there before.
Legend. He got a lot of people graduated.
Yeah,
he's responsible for more athletes graduating from Ohio State than anybody in history.
He is, and he did a fantastic job, and he's just going to retire, or at least he says that. I feel like every year he tells me that. But reached out to him. Ohio State had a program that paid for the education and kind of gave the support that I needed. But really, what helped me the most was, as COVID rolled in, Ohio State moved to a lot of remote-based learning. So I could go and, take class and be anywhere. I could be at my job, I could be at home, I could make it work for my schedule, which in the past, going to class and doing that, like trying to run a business and have a family and be an older person that has more responsibilities than just going to school.
Not enough hours in the day, man.
Right. And it just made it hard. So that really opened, it made it easier for me just to go and get through it. So I'm happy it's done. I'm happy it's over. So yeah, it's one of those things like, it's cool that, my mom, my dad, and myself all graduated from the same university. That was kind of the whole point of me going to Ohio State, because they all went there. So it's just one more thing to have done as a pinnacle, as a career marker. And again, like I think I said in a news article, it's a big FU to all the haters. And I still got haters in the article,
Oh, for sure.
You're like, dude, you're like, come on, man. Like, there's a time and place for everything. And I get people on there, they're social media heroes, and they're going to say whatever. But that's the point of the article, was to say, at 44, like, shit's hard, and I overcame whatever,
Right. Right. Not to mention it's you're setting an example for guys, because we know so many guys now are leaving after second, third year, trying, you want to make money financially. I'm all for that. But to set the example of, hey, listen, it doesn't matter how old you are, come back, get it done. It's something, it's a feather you can put in your cap. It's something you put on your resume. And it's a great thing. And I guess if you don't have haters out there, you're not doing things right, man, but you are doing things right. Andy Katzenmoyer joining us on 1372 show, the QB and the OG. We'll continue to catch up with you, man. And for all your insurance needs, people can find you over there at Hoskin Insurance Solutions. Come and check you guys out. Any NFL alumni guys out there, get in touch with Andy, get involved, and help out in the community down there in Central Ohio, man. Appreciate your time, Andy.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Later.